What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. If you're a Warlock who's been struggling to get through some of this season's content, then you are in luck, because I'm about to introduce to you an amazingly overly powerful solar build that will help you get through any Lost Sector, any dungeon, raid, or Grandmaster Nightfall in Season of the Wish. I know we're a few weeks into the season already, and I really wanted to get this video out sooner, but there's only so much time in a day. With that said, I would like to introduce to you this amazing combination of the Polaris Lance and the Dawn Chorus. This particular combination has been in Destiny for many moons, but in Season of the Wish, its power has increased 7-fold, making it more viable than ever to use. Along with a few other attributing factors, this is one of the most powerful and dominating exotic combinations currently in Destiny, which says a lot when Solar Warlocks have the option of the Sunbracers. In large part, the success of this build is due to the new seasonal artifact mods, and a predominant focus towards solar and Strand energies when it comes to activity modifiers. While it might not be the prettiest pig on the farm, the Dawn Chorus provides extraordinary benefits. It comes with the intrinsic trait called Rights of Ember. This amplifies the damage of Scorch, and this includes any source of Scorch, whether that comes from a weapon or an ability. This applies an additional 200% damage, which is reduced down to 50% when in the Crucible. The Dawn Chorus makes it much easier to trigger ignitions out of scorched enemies, which provides you with a more reliable source to stun unstoppable champions, without having to rely on a specific weapon type. As enemies take Scorch damage, you'll receive bonus melee energy, receiving 5% energy off of each tick of Scorch, which means we'll have our Incendiary Snap or Celestial Fire more readily available. I often find myself swapping between the two of these, based on the activity that I'm in. Close quarter conditions will call for the use of Incendiary Snap, but if there's a lot of distance between you and the enemy, then Celestial Fire will be a much better option. Rights of Ember provides an additional benefit when utilizing the Daybreak Super. You'll apply more Scorch with each projectile, and the damage of each projectile will be increased by 90%. Just like our choice in Melee, the choice in Super is going to be reliant upon the activity and what role you might be playing, because Well of Radiance is an irreplaceable benefit when it comes to damage phases against dungeon and raid bosses, and it's a vital source of survivability when it comes to Grandmaster Nightfalls. So how does the Polaris Lance play into all this? The Polaris Lance provides the perfect 5th intrinsic trait. Precision hits return ammo directly to the magazine, and landing 4 precision shots loads in an explosive round that deals out an incredible amount of damage. On top of this explosion, precision final blows will also create a smaller solar explosion, equivalent to that of Dragonfly, which is thanks to its catalyst. When the Polaris Lance is paired up with the Dawn Chorus and our selection of seasonal mods and class tree choices, this becomes a weapon that can decimate large groups of enemies and big bosses and champions in just seconds. And because of how we have this build set up, you're going to have exceptionally fast uptime of all of your abilities. As I've mentioned a few times already, this build gets significantly amplified because of this season's artifact. So let's go ahead and take a look at what these new mods are going to provide for us. We have Kindling Trigger, so whenever we are radiant, our solar weapons will cause enemies to become scorched, and the damage of the Scorch will get increased because of our use of the Dawn Chorus. We've also got Flint Striker. Rapid precision hits and rapid final blows with any solar weapon will grant and extend radiance. You'll need about 25% of your magazine in order to trigger radiance through precision hits, or 3 rapid kills, while Radiant will receive a 20% bonus in damage dealt out of any of our weapons, and any weapon that isn't already assigned to a specific champion will be able to pierce barrier shields. To complement these two mods, we're using Rays of Precision, so when we are radiant, precision final blows from solar weapons will cause the target to instantly ignite, which in turn gives us more opportunity to spread bonus damage, extra Scorch, and stun unstoppable champions. We'll dig deeper into our weapon choices later in the video, but we are including Strand weapons into this build, because we also have the Torch artifact mod available. While Radiant, solar weapons will deal 5% additional damage against enemies who are affected by Strand or Stasis debuffs. This will go hand in hand with the use of the Unraveling Orbs mod, which will give any Strand weapon the ability to unravel targets after collecting an orb. We'll also be using Strand weapons that have the ability to sever enemies, so we'll have several methods to cause Strand debuffs, allowing us to maintain this 5% increase in weapon damage. We're also using Wished into Being, which is going to cause our abilities to generate orbs when we're close to having our super energy full, which lets us get our super energy back just a little bit faster. Revitalizing Blast will be an extremely useful mod to apply bonus damage to bosses and champions. When hitting a champion or a boss with a solar ability, that target becomes weakened with a 15% void debuff that lasts 6 seconds, increasing the amount of damage that anyone on your team will deal to that enemy. We're also utilizing Heart of the Flame when we are in team activities, which is going to amplify the amount of damage dealt when casting our super. This would increase the damage dealt by projectiles from Daybreak, or it would increase the damage dealt when casting grenades and melees after popping Well of Radiance. This increase is based on the amount of teammates that are nearby, and it can range from a 6% increase all the way up to a 19% increase in your overall super damage. But when we're not in a team activity, we take Heart of the Flame off and we start utilizing Solo Operative, so that all weapon and all ability damage will be increased by 15%. There's also some situations where we'll use Argent Ordnance so that we can increase the damage dealt by rocket launchers, which has proven to be an extremely valuable asset so far this season, where we've seen the Dragon's Breath exotic rocket launcher return into Destiny, a great exotic to rotate into this build when not utilizing the Polaris lance. Now that we've addressed how the seasonal artifact is going to improve this build, let's dig into the Solar 3.0 class tree. To start with, we're using Heat Rises. This allows us to use weapons and abilities while floating in the air. But it also gives us the ability to consume a grenade, and when we consume a grenade, we'll apply Cure to everyone nearby. This counts as a 2-stack of Cure. But we're also using healing grenades, which become even more important to use in in-game content, and it provides us with more Cure when consuming a grenade. After consuming a grenade, the Heat Rises buff will be applied, and while this is active, any airborne final blow is going to generate between 20 and 50% melee energy based on the combatant's tier level. These final blows don't have to be made while just floating around in the air. You can just bunny hop, and as long as the enemy dies when your feet are off the ground, that energy is going to be generated. We're also using Touch of Flame. Since we're using Heat Rises and healing grenades, this will cause Cure and Restoration to be applied when consuming a grenade, and that gets applied to nearby allies. Phoenix Dive is a great option to have an additional way of damaging enemies and providing Cure and Restoration, but you'll often find during team-oriented activities that utilizing a Healing Rift becomes far more beneficial. And now let's talk about our choice in Fragments. We're using Ember of Torches, and I know that we'll get Radiance because of Flint Striker, but this will give us that Radiance beforehand, ensuring that we can always maintain that 20% bonus in damage. We're already amplifying the damage of Scorch thanks to Dawn Chorus, so having Ember of Ashes is going to crank things up big time, because we'll now get a 50% increase in all Scorch damage, whether it's applied by weapons or abilities. Using Ember of Searing will maximize the uptime of our melee energy by generating additional melee energy when scorching enemies, adding to what Dawn Chorus and Heat Rises will already be providing. This gives us as little as 8% melee energy on rank and file enemies, and as much as 25% for those higher ranking ones. And the last fragment we're using is Ember of Char, which is really going to pair up nicely with the use of Rays of Precision. Any solar ignition will spread that overpowered scorch to nearby targets, causing more ignitions to occur. When it comes to the main character stats to focus towards, resilience will be imperative when in in-game content, but just not in the Crucible. Recovery is just as important as resilience, as it reduces the cooldown of our rift energy, and it increases how quickly our health begins to recover. Since we're already getting a ton of melee energy with this build, we can focus the rest of our efforts towards discipline, so we have our healing grenade energy much more often, or we can focus towards intellect, so we can have our super back faster. And when it comes to our choice in armor mods, starting with the Dawn Chorus, we're using a harmonic siphon mod, so that solar weapons generate orbs and grant armor charges. We're also using Font of Wisdom, because our intellect is currently a little low, and this will provide an extra 30 points of intellect when those armor charges are active, helping us get our super back faster. We're also using the Hands-On mod, which is going to generate a small amount of super energy whenever we defeat enemies with our charged melee. If you're content already with how much intellect that you have, I would pop on a second Hands-On mod. On our gloves, we've got the Heavy-Handed mod. This will generate orbs when defeating enemies with our charged melee. Only one orb can be generated every 10 seconds, and each orb is going to provide 2.5% additional super energy. Since we've got a ton of ability generation already going on with this build, we can focus a little bit towards improving the performance of our solar weapons, so we're using a harmonic reloader mod. This might not be as beneficial to use with the Polaris lance, but it's going to help all the other solar weapons. Our chest armor is all about survivability. We've got resistance mods and emergency reinforcement. This will help reduce incoming damage whenever your shields are broken, as long as you have at least 3 armor charges active. On our boots, we've got recuperation to give us health recovery whenever we collect orbs. And since the uptime of our melee is already going to be maxed out, we're using Innervation to get extra grenade energy when collecting orbs. This way we can have our healing grenade much more often. Since we're running Font of Wisdom and Emergency Reinforcement, we want to ensure that we are stacked on armor charges. So we're using a Stacks on Stacks mod, so that every time an orb is collected, 2 armor charges will be provided instead of 1. On our class item, we're utilizing the Reaper mod, so that we have another source of creating orbs. And we're also using Distribution, so whenever we cast our Rift near enemies, we'll also gain a small amount of energy provided to each ability. Between our armor mods, our character stats, our class tree, and the Dawn Chorus, we're going to have exceptionally fast uptime of our grenades, melee, and super, and we're going to keep enemies sufficiently scorched and primed for ignitions, which is really going to make just about any weapon look great with this build. As I said before, we are using a few Strand weapons, and the Polaris Lance is our main exotic choice, but there are others that will become beneficial based on what activity that you're in. So let's take a look at those different loadout options. To start with, Strand weapons with the Slice weapon trait will cause enemies to become severed after casting your class ability. This is a trait currently found on the Scatter Signal Fusion Rifle, the Naeem's Lance Sniper, the Marcato 45 Heavy Machine Gun, and the Incisor Trace Rifle, and it will cause enemies to deal 40% less damage while severed, making it a lot easier to survive some of those brutal attacks. And keep in mind that after an orb is collected, those Strand weapons will cause enemies to become unraveled. As I said earlier, there are times that we'll use a rocket launcher, and when we do, it's going to be either the Dragon's Breath, the Apex Predator, or the Crowning Duologue, but otherwise, our main choice in heavy is typically going to be a heavy machine gun. There's a few strong solar machine guns, but the Circular Logic Strand machine gun has always been my go-to choice, especially when it has Envious Assassin and Vorpal. And when it comes to our energy slot, when we're not using Polaris Lance, we're using legendary weapons that come with Incandescent. Weapons like the Callus Mini Tool, Zaoli's Bane, or Abyss Defiant, which can also come with Heal Clip. But having Incandescent is going to add to our ability to cause Scorch and create ignitions. And when we look at alternate exotics to use when not using the Polaris, the Sunshot is going to be one of the best and most effective when it comes to close quarter situations. The Prometheus Lens, the Hierarchy of Needs, the Devil's Ruin Sidearm, or the Tiku or Taiku's Divination. These are all going to be fantastic options that are going to play right into the use of the Dawn Chorus and our seasonal artifact mods. The Teraba is also a really strong option right now with these new seasonal mods, and it's an exotic that's being slept on by many players. Whether your goal is to dominate Master Lost sectors, Grandmaster Nightfalls, or Master Raids and Dungeons, the Dawn Chorus is going to be an exemplary solar build in Season 23 that will bring you a ton of success in everything you jump into. And with that said, that brings us to an end of today's amazing Dawn Chorus Polaris Lance Solar Warlock build. If you've already given this build a try this season, then be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what builds you've enjoyed the most so far. To make a quick copy of today's build, you can find the Destiny Item Manager link listed in the description below. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. We're actually just about to hit the 50,000 subscriber mark, so I want to just say thank you to each and every one of you out there for supporting the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new home, then be sure to check out the Discord link in the description below and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.